Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting with the Virtual Tasting Society. As always, I am Vadim Perlovsky, and today we're excited to welcome a brand that we have not yet featured, a brand that I've been working hard to invite to join us, and I'm glad to say that they're finally here. Thank you so much to Carl Peterson for setting it up. They're a wonderful importer here in America. The brand is Mackmyra out of Sweden. So I first discovered this brand at a private in-home tasting with my friends at the Women Who Whiskey Long Beach, at Stacy's house. And then I was really impressed with the flavors I was getting from the whiskey. It was just the usual, the core orange label that we're going to talk about later. But then, as everyone in this group knows, we tasted the single barrel pick from Single Cask Nation of Mackmyra, and that really blew my mind. And I knew I had to feature them. Some flavors that I've never tasted before, really, for the whiskey connoisseur that's had it all and wants to expand their palate. This is really, for me, this is the brand I'm reaching towards. So I'm super excited to feature Mackmyra out of Sweden. And joining us today to tell us all about the brand is Matt Davey, is the export manager based in the UK.
That's correct, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for logging in at 3 a.m. your time, 7 p.m. our Pacific time here. But we appreciate it. You appreciate it. So anyone here who's on the East Coast complaining that it's 10 p.m., no excuses today. None. Zero. All that said, Matt, I'm not going to take up more time with introductions. We're super excited to have you. Thank you very much for joining us. I can't wait to learn about this and what gives us these wonderful new flavors that I have not tasted in whiskey before. And taste some stuff. So please, over to you.
No problem, guys. Well, guys, everybody, thank you very much for having us on board. Really excited about this and looking forward to maybe doing another one sometime in the near future or coming over to see you guys in person. So I'm Matt. As Vadim explained, I am the export manager. I have been with Mackmyra since 2018 here in the UK. So I come with a wealth of knowledge. I started the UK branch then as an ambassador, have worked my way up to the export side of things. So I deal with all the regions across the globe. I also have a wealth of knowledge when it comes down to our 30-litre cask programs, as well as our bulk liquid offerings and independent bottle offerings. For those, obviously, that haven't ever heard of Mackmyra, we've been around since 1999. The concept of Swedish whiskey started off with 8 friends. Now, if you do happen to have a large size bottle, a 70 cl or 700 ml bottle, you'll see there's a couple of dimples underneath, and those dimples are actually supposed to represent the founding members. Now, this was just a bunch of avid whiskey drinkers like yourselves who were in a sweat lodge or in a ski lodge in the middle of winter in 1998, and subsequently they all love Scotch whiskey. So sitting around having a chat, as one does with their whiskey, they asked the question, why hasn't Sweden ever produced whiskey? We've got all the natural resources, and when I say that, all our ingredients is 100% Swedish. So anything that goes into that, simply saying all the grain, all the water, the yeast is Swedish, including the peat. The white peat that we actually use to smoke our barley on site actually comes from just down the road. So we're very proud to have those there. So the 8 chappies, they decided, okay, how do we do this? So they obviously crossed the pond, a short trip from the pond, from their side, and went over into Scotland and actually went around and spoke to a couple of distilleries, learned a couple of things, and came back to Sweden. And 1 year later, in 1999, we opened up Mackmyra and founded it in a little place called Gävle. Now, Gävle is 120 miles north of Stockholm, Sweden. It's a beautiful little town. And I've been there a couple of times and I fell in love completely with the distillery itself. So I'm just going to pop up a little presentation on for you guys just so we can go through some of the things. And I hope you guys will find some things. Please stop me at any stage if you guys do want to have a chat, or if you're unsure about anything, I'm more than happy to share. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
That's good.
All right, perfect. All right, so brief little history as I gave it to you guys. And let me just get this little basket out. All right. So, as I said, 1998, and these are the founding members over here. And we've got two distilleries, or we had two distilleries. Now, the little white building on the right-hand side is called Brooks Distillery, which is our first distillery we ever had. And this is where I said it was in Yevla. On the top corner over here, as you can see, that was the very first 100-liter still. That's one of the founding members actually engineered ourselves and well themselves, and they actually built it. So that's our first ever copper still that we actually handmade. They actually built it from scratch. And then down at the bottom, as you can see, are what we are famous for, which is our 13-liter cask program, which at a later stage and after all the whiskey we've drank, I'll get into that for you guys too. As I said, in about 2011, we then moved forward with some innovation, and I'll get into more of the innovation side of things later on while we talk about some of the drams. But Mackmyra is known for innovation, environmental friendliness, and we're always pushing the boundaries where it comes down to our carbon footprints, how we do things going forward with our innovation, and how that all integrates in our DNA. So as I was saying, Yevla is a little mark where that red is just above Stockholm. It's about an hour away. So in 2011, we decided to move away from Brooks Distillery. We've opened up the world's first gravity-fed distillery, which is called Gravity. So if everybody understands how whiskey is made, normally it's left to right under the pot still with heated flame. We've decided to flip the whole thing on its head. So everything gets grain-fed to the top. The grains go down into the malt tun, through the mash tuns, down into the still. And hey, pesto, when it comes down to the bottom, you've got new make spirits. So super eco-efficient. 2021, we were awarded the most environmentally friendly whiskey distillery in the world, which we're highly proud of. So our first dram for the evening, and this will be a really cool talking point because this is part of what we used to call our seasonal series. Now, traditionally, every year we used to bring out two whiskey expressions. So one being that for summer, and then we used to also bring out a seasonal whiskey for winter. This is Bjork South, and this is where the innovation side of things comes into when we do whiskey ourselves. So Bjork South, meaning birch sap is actually a birch sap wine finish whiskey itself. We collaborated with a really, really nice sort of wild berry wine company called Grattin. Now, they're famous for berry wines, very famous for all these kinds of things. So what they do is they actually take like cloudberries and raspberries and they create hunting wine with it. And this is what kind of Swedes do. So Bjork sap or Bjork sap is actually sap collected and made into wine. So the first day of spring, basically what actually happens is the sap trees crack and they harvest the wine and they make wine make wine out of the sap, which is then what we do is take it and season some of the casks that we make, which is absolutely incredible. And this is the innovation side of things. So we used to have a master distiller. Her name was Angela D'Orazio. She is quite well known in the industry for actually creating fabulous things. And she was with us for, I think, probably 18 years going on. And she's the lady behind a lot of the expressions you're going to be tasting tonight. Now, Bjork Sav, a couple of really cool things that go into this, and you'll see that we don't have age statements. We'll never have an age statement with our whiskey. So the reason being that is we actually use whiskeys between 1 to 4 and 8 to 9 in our blends. So this whiskey, I would say the oldest whiskey in Bjork Sav would probably be about an 8-year-old bourbon in that one. Okay. Do you guys want to have a sip and just take a look and let me know what you guys think of that on the nose?
The nose is really interesting. It's so much sandalwood, but it's also got that like undernote of like the sandalwood soap that I remember my mom always had around, but it's really quite pleasant, very floral.
It is. And the reason why it's floral is obviously you'll get a lot of that sappiness, which is actually from the sweetness, but you will also pick up a lot of citrus notes in most of our whiskeys. And there's a reason behind that. When our new make comes out of the spirit itself, our actual new make spirit has a very high citrus kind of note. So you'll get a lot of citrus and floral notes through all of our whiskeys. What does everybody think of that on the taste? Can anyone tell me what they can pick up on that?
It's a lot of vanilla.
So definitely a lot of vanilla from the ex-bourbon itself. Lots of notes of sherry in there from the sherry cask that we use, which was Oloroso. That makes up about 24% of that whiskey itself. It is geared up for that spring kind of taste itself. So if you do have a look at the box behind me, which is this one over here, you can see it actually looks like a bird sap tree. It's a lot of like kind of green and it fades into like a nice white kind of thing. That represents the birch sap tree. So yeah, a nice light kind of flower on the box. So the actual bottle itself will represent kind of spring. So what Angela was trying to aim at here was to try to bring the Swedish spring into the mouths of the whiskey drinker. Probably one of our best whiskeys we've ever done through the seasons collection. And we did about, I would say, close to about 18 seasonal whiskeys until we came to the end of that in 2022, 23.
This
Any
is the
questions?
bottle that really drove me to you guys. I
Yeah.
bought this bottle on a whim at a local store here, and cracked it on a Sunday, and by the following Saturday it was done, and I was buying the last 3 they had in stock. This is
Well,
this is the one that I was saying where flavors that I've never tasted before. It's light and floral and just all over the place, and it's just sweet and delicious and all the things that I like and all the
yeah,
things that I don't taste in my usual scotch.
yeah.
I almost think it's almost like a dessert
Like a
drink.
dessert, like the desserts. I've actually heard that so many times at whiskey festivals, especially with York Sub. A lot of, I would say, women or female people who like ladies who do like whiskey and stuff actually tend to move to this bottle. Even the most avid woman who comes there or wife comes and says, "I don't drink whiskey." This is probably one of the nicest whiskeys for ladies to drink. I've had this in highballs and cocktails all across Europe and stuff, and I can tell you right now, this never fails to impress anyone at whiskey festivals. A lot of people keep on coming back to that dram.
And I kind of, if I feel it gets better and better the more I don't know if it just needs to sit and breathe a little bit before you
Yeah.
start drinking it. But yeah, because my first sip was, this is interesting, but I don't really know if I like it. I think now I'm more on the, this is actually really good.
Yeah. So look, I mean, most whiskey, as with wine, obviously breathes and gets better. And we will, I think when we get close to identitate, we're going to definitely need to let identitate breathe, because that's kind of just the whiskey it is. But yes, let it breathe a little bit. Let's see what happens. But if you can't taste some of the floral notes, I would say just take a pipette or 2 drops of water, just to like open it up a bit to get some flavors going and stuff. I think Craft Shack, if I'm not mistaken, in KNL, if I believe that. I think that's where it's available currently in the US
Not
market.
anymore.
Not at Craft Shack.
No, not a Canel anymore. I cleaned them out.
Oh, did you clean them out? All right. So, we might have to have a chat to Carl about that. My warehouse, we don't have anything. So with the seasonal collection, it is a very limited run. I wouldn't say super limited. We do about 10,000 bottles per run when it came down to the seasonal. So they are out there, but we are literally, I'm down to the last 6 cases, which have been taken up by our monopoly in Sweden. So if you do find some of these, please get them straight away, because these aren't being made anymore.
So the birch wine that you use to season the casks, that's not being used. That's just a seasoning, and you dump it when it's done.
Yeah, so we done. Sometimes we actually do use the some of the seasonings spirits that we do use for it. Unfortunately, Bjork Sav we don't. It's basically just a wine that gets put in. We season it like anything else, and then we decant it and throw it away. We hardly ever use it, but sometimes we actually do use some of the stuff that we have. We brought out a a winter-inspired wine called Winter Blood, which was a blue vine or blood finish. And we used some citrinus blood, and we actually bottled that and actually paired it together for winter release, which was actually really, really nice. So you could get the experience of what we saturate the cask with, and you actually got the whiskey itself. So it was a really nice project, that one. But yeah, we do sometimes do things like that.
Yeah, I was telling Carl you should import some of the wines, because I've never had birch wine and now I really want to try it. Or the cloudberry wine that we're gonna taste later. It blows my mind.
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to actually get a bottle of the Bjork that we actually used from Gatitini. All I can tell you, it's probably the most sweetest dessert wine I've ever had in my life. It's sweet and it's tart and it's just a ridiculous flavor like I've never experienced in my life. But having it in the whiskey itself and being able to taste the bottle, it really brings it all together.
Wonderful.
All right. All right. Are we ready to go on to one of my favorite whiskeys of all time?
Let's do it.
All right. Can everyone see my screen?
We can now.
All right, perfect. So this is probably one of the reasons why I started working for Mackmyra in 2018. When I first got the opportunity to actually firstly hear about Mackmyra, I was brought into it by a friend of mine who first moved here and started Mackmyra UK. He said to me, "Come over to my house. I've got something interesting to tell you." And I was like, "Okay, fine." So I went over to his place, and he pulled out this bottle that I've never seen, this orange, dark amber, burnt orange bottle, and I saw this foreign Spence egg on it. And I'm like, "What is this?" And he was like, "Have you never ever had a Swedish whiskey in your life before?" And I said, "No, I haven't." He poured it, and first of all, I fell in love with the whiskey. And then he said, "Would you like to become a brand ambassador?" And I said, "Yes, if it's to sell something like this, I'm definitely in." So as I touched my lips, I jumped straight into the pond, and literally 3 days later, I was working for Mackmyra, and I have never looked back since. So Svensk Ek, meaning Swedish oak. This is part of our core range whiskies, and this is something that we will continue doing throughout our entire lifetime. I can't even talk much about this. So this is 100% Swedish single malt whiskey. It is basically how it's created is we have access to some of the Swedish oak forests that, funny enough, have been there for about 150 years. And how the Swedes actually got Swedish oak is kind of a really cool tale. So the king of Sweden at that time were needed, and back in those days, and I'm talking about the 1800s, late 1800s, 1900s, when ships were still made from wood, or galleys were still made from wood. The Swedish king actually will sort it out and actually said, "Please, can we start building ships?" So they actually went to the French king and got some French acorns, and the French oak acorns, and they actually started planting them in around Sweden, fjords and on the islands. And obviously taking some time, as oak trees do tend to grow. They basically took about 120 odd years. And by the time these trees were actually ready to be made into ships or into galleys, they were already iron hull ships. So the Swedish got stuck with these oak trees all around Sweden. We then decided to actually approach the Swedish government and get access to these oak trees. And from then on, we actually started coopering our own Swedish oak whiskey. So we are one of the first, and I think probably still the only Swedish distillery that actually coopers their own casks and Swedish oak casks and uses them. So it is a very unique kind of flavor profile, very unique kind of style. It's probably, I don't know. You guys have a sip and we can go through it, and just let me know what you actually think about it, because we've recently did a facelift to the bottle, and it's always a nice experience to hear what everybody says the first time they taste this. So please have a sip and let me know, guys.
So Svensk obviously means Swedish, and
That's
oak is oak. Our Ek is oak.
That is correct. So ek is oak. So Svens ek, as they would pronounce it. And this is, again, between 5 to 8 year old whiskies that go into this. We mainly have some ex-bourbon and Swedish oak and a hint of Oloroso. Now, if you do have a box on it, you will see that there is a little 10% just on the top over there. There's a reason for that. So what we actually do is we actually take a 5-year-old bourbon 200-liter hogshead, and we take 10% of that liquid out and we put it into the fresh Swedish oak casks for about 6 to 8 months. And we then take that and marry it back into the 200-liter cask. So you get a really big, bold barrage of this spicy, intriguing kind of taste and profile on the nose and the palate, which is kind of significant because of the spiciness and the sugariness that comes out of the Swedish oak itself. So it's a very distinct kind of spicy, peppery flavor. It's a very interesting dram for everyone the first time they have it.
It's got like an herbalness to it.
Yeah. I do like the hint of a little bit of sandalwood, but for me, the really interesting part about this is the spiciness that the Swedish oak lends to this whiskey. I can't explain it. It's almost like a gingery kind of peppery taste. Does anybody else enjoy this? What do you guys think? Is anybody having this for the first time?
Yeah, first time, definitely. It's really interesting. It's got some really nice notes on the nose, but then like there's a honey on the nose, but it turns into like a honey caramel on the palate. Like the toffee and apples and baking spice, the ginger. I mean, I'm now completely fascinated by the idea of Swedish oak being so new to something that I've never tasted it in a whiskey before. This is just fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much.
Really lovely level of spice on it too.
Yeah, so I mean, those caramel notes that you're getting, Jane, those are literally from the bourbon cask. Obviously, you know, with the bourbon profile, vanilla caramel. So I do agree with you. I think the Svensk, what it does to the caramel and the bourbon is just gives that extra complexity and a little bit more intrigue into the dram itself.
I find it kind of spicy.
Yeah. So
interesting. I don't think I'm a fan of this one. I'm much more a fan of the Björksav so far.
I'm with you, and I mean everybody's taste profiles are different.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So the nice thing about working at Mackmyra, and what I've come to know about, you know, our audience and the people that love us is the innovation. Is yes, we do have so many whiskeys that we've done in the past, release wise, that yes, somewhere down the line we will sometimes not get it right, but I can guarantee you 99% of the time there is a dram within our house that will suit your flavor profile. We definitely have almost done everything. So yeah, I mean, I thank you very much, but yeah, I really do appreciate it.
Yep.
I will say it's spicy, but not rye spicy. I get like
no. But I'm also very much a wuss when it comes to spicy food. I mean, people.
Same.
My friends tell me that water is too spicy for me, and they're not necessarily completely wrong. So I think that's what hits me the most on this one. And I thought it was weird. I don't think I've ever tried a whiskey that kind of had that flavor for me.
I got the bottle on clearance at K&L after Single Cast Nation for $38, and it was a steal, and I love it, and I think it's super interesting, and they're out of it now, so I'm stoked to have it.
Right.
56 at Total Wine this afternoon.
56. That's not too. That's I think is fairly good, because I know there's a couple of people out here in Europe and stuff paying close to about 60 quid, 60 pounds, or about 60 euro a bottle. So you guys are getting a good deal there. Really good deal. All right. So are we all ready to move on to the next dram? Which is probably I'm going to probably babble about this dram. Please stop me if I get too boring, but this is another dram that has kind of showcased our, how can I say it, innovation side of things. And we've also raised, we ruffled a lot of feathers in the industry when we actually did this. So yeah, it's a really, really cool project that we were part of. And I'll get into it now. So are we Midas or Identitate, Vadim?
It's up to you. Which one do you
Alright.
want to do first?
Yeah, I can. Is it okay if we do intelligence first, guys?
Yeah,
'Cause,
let's do it.
It'll be nice because that's kind of ending Angela's, I would say, journey with us at the end of the day, because we're going to start moving from Midas to Identitate, which is part of our new limited ranges and big batch ranges.
No problem at all. I want to learn about this one as well.
All
Sounds
right.
good. So let me just put it in the chat. What's the order we're gonna go with today? Just because I thought.
All right.
I had it.
So we did Bjorksav, Svensk. We'll do intelligence now if it's okay with you.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. And then we'll go on to Midas Identitate, and then we'll finish off with our Svensk Rook, which is the Pete.
Got it. Thanks.
Perfect. All right, guys. Intelligence. This is the world's first ever artificial intelligence whiskey that we created. We did this in conjunction with Microsoft and a Finnish company called Fourkind. They are now called ThoughtWorks. So the concept for this came up again by Angela, our ex-master blender, and she actually asked the question, how could artificial intelligence play its role in the whiskey industry? So not knowing anything, and when I say the idea came around, this is before ChatGPT and all these wonderful things that have become very popular over the last 2 years. We did this in 2018, end of 2018, beginning of 2019, we came out with this release. Now, probably one of the most talked about whiskeys we've ever made. I still to this day get asked hundreds of questions. I'm actually doing a big expose and presentation at a technology day up in Birmingham later on the year, purely on the concept. So Angela went off to Microsoft and said, hi guys, look, I want to come up with the world's first AI whiskey. Microsoft said, that sounds like a hell of a good project. We would like to be part of that. We will lend you their Zero program backend. And are there any tech muffins or anybody who works in IT here by any chance? Okay. Henrik, you do? All right, you're gonna love this. So we went to them and they said, okay, look, use the Azure system to run the numbers and the backend, but you're gonna have to create some software. So we went to a Finnish company, as I said, called Fourkind, and they started helping us develop the software to talk to the Azure system to help us crunch the numbers. So that was the first kind of part of it. Now, obviously, as everyone knows, data is essential to any algorithm. So we said, okay, what kind of data are you looking for? And now, with us being the first people doing it, it was kind of a walk into a sort of a rabbit hole, if I can put it this way, because it was a project that was in concept for about 2-3 years before we released. So they said data about whiskey, your distillery. So we started feeding them tasting notes, basic recipes. We've gave them all the listings of what whiskeys we actually had in store. And we've got about eight warehouses in and around Sweden. One of them being a mine that holds about, I would say, about 15,000 various cask sizes, various casks, 100 liters, 200 liters, 30 liters, 128 liters. So we gave them as much data as possible, including sales data. And eventually we started crunching the numbers and the algorithm started doing what it needs to do. And we processed over 1.2 million possible recipes from the AI. So obviously we couldn't do like that many, so we started narrowing it down, and we actually eventually got it down to about 5 possible recipes that we actually sounded like, and we actually said, okay, this is where we're going to go. So how it works is eventually the software kicks out a recipe that the blender or the master blender can go and use. So it tells us what the optimal mix or maturation or blend is, what the best age is, what the best ABV we should be looking at. And all Angela needed to do, and this is where the human touch comes into, Angela literally just went into the warehouses and actually chose the right cask. So yes, we could have just gone in and picked any 200-liter cask, any Oloroso, any American, any Swedish oak cask we wanted. But Angela actually went and chose those casks and actually had some things like a blender would. So she actually chose the right things, but it was followed to that artificial intelligence thing. So the whiskey itself is concepted basically to say, look, it can be done, but this is the best balanced whiskey from our house at this stage, depending on the numbers that we've crunched. So our first AI whiskey was an elegant whiskey. So it had no notes of any pre-stored smoky stuff. Unlike the one that you're tasting now, which is the second edition that we brought out a year and a half ago, you'll notice that in this one, there is a bit of a smoking, or what I like to refer to as a smoke tail, and that comes from the virgin Swedish oak or the 13-liter. So as you can see, we've crunched the numbers twice now, and it's two completely different whiskeys with the data in it, but this is the best that we can do from our side. So this is what the most balanced Mackmyra whiskey can taste on the market. So this is a really cool thing. The other side of the penny, a lot of people ask me, is this going to take away a lot from the master blender and change? No, it's not. You're always going to have somebody like a master blender to know to get the right blends together. The data will give you the right recipe, but the blending still has to be done by hands-on. So no, it's just helping the blender reduce the time it takes to guess the best recipe for the whiskey. So have a sip of this. It is something that we probably will do another volume at a later stage, but I think after the third volume we'll call it a day. But have a taste of the whiskey and let me know what you think of this concept.
I think it's a very interesting concept. I mean, albeit, I think when it comes to whiskey in general, I mean, that human touch is important, and it's I think it's a fun experiment. I don't necessarily hope that this is going to be the de facto way of doing whiskey going forward.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And being a traditionalist, I do agree. Some things are better left unsaid and left alone. But I think it was a really good concept for people to say, look, it can be done. We have done it, but again, this is part of our DNA as Mackmyra. We are an innovative whiskey distillery. We always have been. This is our premise. This is what we do. Whether it is starting Sweden's first whiskey distillery 25 years ago, funny enough, it's our 25th anniversary this year, to being Sweden's first distillery to bring out a 20-year-old whiskey last year. And then again, with the artificial intelligence, the first company to do so. So it's part of our DNA to push boundaries like this. And yes, it's something that has rattled a bit of feathers, but in a good way, I think. So has anybody picked up anything specific that they like to talk about on the nose or on the taste? Any particular notes of citrus and vanilla and fudge that we normally tend to find in our whiskeys, which I think you guys are now starting to get the grasp of?
I put it in the chat, but the first thing that hit my nose was just baked apples, and then a little bit of, and then that same sort of rich cinnamon, but also then some herbal like sage, which I quite liked.
I've often heard that somebody's said to me that funny enough, you say herbs. I've heard somebody tell me that it's very fresh and spearminty. Funny enough.
I also put it in the chat. My son works for a Swedish software company,
Okay.
Varner Software, and so he was really interested in this AI focused whiskey. And he was born in '98, just like your company, so it sort of works.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, look, I mean, it was a talking point. It will always, I think, probably remain a very strong talking point for us. So yeah, it's something to have. I mean, we've sold out of Intelligence 01 long time ago, but I've actually seen some bottles in retailing now for I think $1,300 close to. So it is something that is a novelty whiskey, but the rarer it gets, like the more years go on, the rarer it gets. So it is strangely enough something that's taking up in price, but it is something that's as I said, brought a lot of attention to our distillery itself. But it's a hell of a great jam. I enjoy it because it's a really well balanced whiskey from what we do. And I get a lot of people coming back to the table and having a chat and going, okay, I pick up a lot of things. You can go a month down the line, you'll pick up a whole different kind of profile, especially with the intelligence itself. It's such a tricky whiskey. It just gives you more and more as the months go by.
The 30-liter Swedish oak, it says it's the smoky recipe. Is that the same as the Svensk rock, but is that the smoky recipe?
Yeah, so the Svensk rook, we'll get to that later on. So that is that little bit of that smokiness and that spiciness is obviously from the Swedish oak itself. But if you take a look at the tasting notes, you probably see something what we call pre-stored. Now, has anybody heard of what a pre-stored recipe is by any chance? Okay, so what some distilleries do is they'll use a pre-stored recipe, or we tend to use it often. It's basically a 200-liter hogshead, bourbon hogshead, that we've actually have matured whiskey in for 4 years. And then we take it out and, we add this to our 30-liter casks to save time. Now, our 30-liter cask program, we have a reserve program where you can actually fill a cask yourself. It's 30 liters, and you can either use our elegant, or what we call a non-peated recipe, or our rook recipe, which means smoky in English. So it's our peated version. And there's a reason why we call it Svensk rook, or Swedish smoke, and I'll get that at the later stage. But yeah, the 30-liter program that we do is really cool because it's your journey to own a cask itself, and you can go from day 1 to the 3rd, 4th year and bottle your own whiskey. So it's a whole journey what we do, and we send you samples, that kind of thing, and you can come up to Gävle, to the distillery, and come and visit your cask at either the Borders mine or possibly at the warehouse, which is an ex-military bunker that we have just around the corner from the distillery. But yeah, it's a really intense way to mature whiskey and a very quick way to do it. So instead of waiting 4 years, the pre-stored whiskey is already 4 years. So you can just put it into a 30-liter cask for, I would say, 2 years, and you'll have a whiskey finished in that specific cask flavor. So yeah, that's the Swedish oak 30-liter that we add just to give it a bit of an intense kick, and it has a bit of that pre-stored smoky distillate in it. Does that answer your question, Elijah? Perfect. Is there anybody else, any other questions about intelligence, guys?
How
Nothing
does
else?
how does
Yeah.
this number 2 compare to your first version of it?
All right. So number 2, very easily, the difference is what Elijah picked up, is the actual pre-stored Swedish smoke.
Okay.
It's got a smoke tail, whereas the first one was more of a elegant whiskey where there was no peat. The reason being is, 3 years later on, after we released the first one, we crunched the numbers again, and it came out with this recipe and this blend. So it still has elements of the first one, but due to the data we crunched again, people started asking, okay, we need a bit of a more smoky kind of, a more characteristic smoke to it. So this is where the pre-stored smoky came in, that Swedish smoke came in. So that's the difference between it.
Thank you. This is fantastic. I like this.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I don't know if anyone's noticed, but have you noticed that the ABV is 46.1? Do you guys know why that is? Or would you like to know why? So Angela, our old master blender, kind of picked that as our sweet spot. Now, 46.1 ABV is not a really strong enough whiskey to be a cask strength whiskey that you don't get any of the flavor profiles and the finishes that we do, which we want you to experience, but we also want you to have a really good whiskey. So Angela kind of found that perfect balance over the years, that 46.1 is our sweet spot for a lot of our whiskeys, or our previous releases like Svensk X, Svensk Rook. York Sav is 46.1. So most of our seasonal whiskeys are always 46.1s, and that gives you a really nice round of whiskey, but it also gives you guys the opportunity to taste what we do innovation-wise, whether it's a York Sav cask, whether it's a Planterry rum cask, or if it's a Calvados Christian Dior cask. We've also done, I think we've done almost everything under the sun. So almost champagne. I've had a Hjacht Vin wine, which is a raspberry wine. or very deep raspberry wines. So yeah, it's all part of that kind of DNA and innovation that we do. So that's the reason why 46.1 is a very kind of stable ABV that we do across the range. All right. Is everybody okay? No breaks needed? Does anybody need to go get some water or need to go? Are we all good to go? All right, perfect.
We've done this a couple of times.
Okay, I do understand that. So it's just yeah, I had a whiskey tasting about a week and a half ago where we went through about 10 drams. So it was quite intense. It was about a 2.5 hour masterclass. All right. The next one we're going up to is onto Midas, which is part of our new products. So we've been chatting away about our core range offering and our seasonal ranges. Now, unfortunately, we've had a couple of changes around the distillery. We're going through a new generation, or I would say a new era within Mackmyra itself. So we run and to a lot of our fans like upset, and a lot of people guys kind of in Sweden got a bit upset with us when we did announce that we're doing away with the seasonal range, which Bjorksav unfortunately falls part of, and hence the reason why it's becoming so hard to find. We've moved over to a new small batch / limited range where we've taken over from those things, and we've moved over in facelift. So Midas forms part of that, and this is where the new blender comes in, Lee Johnson, who was the understudy to Angela, and this was one of her very first small batch releases that she's done for us. So I do love this one, but it's even a change for me because we've gone away from that safety zone of 46.1. We're now sitting at 43.7 ABV. So completely different type of ABV. It's a brand new blender. So similar kind of nose, similar concept. Also I would say a berry wine or a hunting wine like Bjorksav. But this time we've used some raspberry wine and cloudberry wine to season the cast. Same kind of concept that we did with Bjorksav, like we do with everything else. All right. Sure. Okay. All right. So Midas. New look, new profile, and as you can see, the bottle has vastly changed. If everyone has seen the actual full bottle, we've gone away from a bigger, sort of taller bottle down to a more refined bottle, and then we've also got this kind of really nice, cool darkening where it's only the bottom half that you see it, so it makes it really enticing. Now, Midas is a non-peated whiskey, so we've used our elegant recipe, as you can see over there, and that's what the new bottle looks like. So it's a whole new kind of look and feel to it. So you guys are tasting some of the very first new era whiskey that we're doing, and it's a very interesting whiskey again. Very innovative, very Swedish. Now, everything we do when we release a whiskey has to have some kind of Swedishness in it. Whether it's using juniper in the smoking process of our barley, which we'll get to later, and a very unique flavor to us, whether it's Swedish oak that we use in some of the whiskey blends, whether it's Bjorksav wine or raspberry wine, everything we do will have a Swedish element to it. So nothing we do doesn't say Sweden or Mackmyra in it, okay? So we've never ever done small batch releases. We used to call them moments, which is a very old range where we did limited runs. And that kind of fell in place with, or sort of kind of in between the seasonal releases that we did every year. So now Midas is part of the new small batch range where Lee's starting to showcase her prowess. We launched it late spring last year, and we only had 3,017 bottles. So these are ultra rare. And when I mean ultra rare, we in Sweden itself, actually, when we do launch these things, we kind of have people standing outside the government-run bottle stores called Systembolaget. Now, in Sweden, the government runs most of the bottle stores, and you can only buy it through this. So every time we have a release, we tend to have people packing up in front of these stores. And I know a couple of reasons. When we did this one, we sold out the allocation in Sweden. We had 2,000 bottles allocated. We sold out within 5 minutes. So anything outside Sweden, like this Midas that you're having now, is very sought after, and it is very rare. So again, once this is done and once the bottles are gone, we don't make anything like this ever again. So we will never make another Midas. Will be probably the first time, and if you have 2 bottles, the last time you get it. So have a taste. Please let me know. I think this is the first tasting I've done with Midas, so I'm highly interested to see what you guys think about this.
It holds up to a drop of water really well.
Nice. What notes are you guys picking up? For me, I do get a lot of tartness to it. It's a very interesting dram, and this is probably the 3rd time I'm having it. I've obviously, because I only have 2 bottles for myself to actually take out to the market and stuff. But I'm interested to find out a little bit more about where we're going with our Cloudberry cask, because we've got some interesting things coming out over the next 2 years. That actually is a lot of Cloudberry wine. So, has anybody ever had Cloudberry? Henrik, I think you've probably had Cloudberry before.
No, I'm always Danish, not Swedish. Close enough.
Close enough.
I mean, I may have, but I don't know the English name then. But so this one too, I get that little bit of a spice on, not as pronounced as on the svensk egg.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's nice. As I said, adding a couple of drops of water in it, it explodes.
It explodes, yeah. Yeah. So I mean, this is a very complex whiskey for myself personally. As you guys can see and taste and smell, there's a whole lot of like a smorgasbord of like mixtures and blends going on. You've got a Cloudberry rum cask, you've got a little bit of wine in there, and then an American oak. So it's a really something different. I've never experienced this before.
Did you say it had raspberry wine in there?
Yeah, so raspberry
Yeah,
wine.
because I mean, after I added water and let it breathe a little bit, that really showed up on the end for me, on the finish. That's weird. I like it, but that's interesting. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I got
Jane.
a chance to try the cloudberries when I was in Norway about 10, 15 years ago. I don't quite remember the flavor, but I can definitely tell. There's a little bit of the raspberry note on it, but it's that tartness from the raspberry. The cloudberry seems to be the sweeter note in it.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. And then the fact that you guys also had a cloudberry wine finished in a rum cask, I'm flabbergasted at how interesting the complexity is, how the different flavors have all kind of gone together. I mean, it's magic. This is really quite good. I'm sad that I'll never own a bottle of it, but I'm really thrilled that I got a chance to try it because it's fantastic.
Well, look, I mean, you can always come to the distillery. We have got a little bar and bistro that sits in front of that Gravity distillery that I showed you guys. And it's a whole whiskey village. I mean, we love people coming. We'll take you for tours. There's tours every day. There's a restaurant. But behind the restaurant bar and the bistro, we have what we call our historical records. So there's every single bottle we've ever released. So you can actually come to the distillery itself and actually come and try some of the older whiskeys that we did, like the Special series, which is a super old kind of series that we've done in the very beginning, which is kind of the predecessor and the platform of what Angela started doing when she got into the seasonals and moments range. But you guys are more than welcome to come to the distillery and try anything else, but you'll be able to get it there.
Sweden's on my list, so distillery tour, here I come someday.
Please. Yeah, no, and that goes out to anyone like Vadim Azal. If anybody does come through who's been on the tasting, if you guys are in Sweden and you can make it up to Gävle, please don't hesitate to try get in contact with me or just get in contact with me. Vadim does have my details. I'm more than happy to arrange something for you guys, and if people up in Sweden know that you guys are coming over.
I think at this point that I only travel to go to distilleries, so it'll be to go visit you guys.
Yeah, and look, I mean, with us being the first whiskey distillery in Sweden and basically in Scandinavia itself in 1999, there are a lot more whiskey distilleries and stuff around Scandinavia, Denmark, Stauning, you've got Finland, you've got Kyrol, and particularly in Sweden, you've got three of some of the best whiskeys I've ever had, or whiskey distilleries I've had. Us being one of them, mainly us, sorry. And then you've also got High Coast and Agitator. So there are a couple of really good distilleries in Scandinavia to come and take a look at, which are very interesting. My favorite is probably outside of Sweden is probably Stauning, which is a Danish rye whiskey place. Their maple syrup finished rye whiskey blew my mind this year when I did some of the judging at the World Whiskey Awards about 2-3 weeks ago. It totally blew my mind when I had a chance to taste it. So worth your while coming to Scandinavia, coming to visit us, and gonna go take a look what's around there. It's a nice place to go and travel, especially for a whiskey drinker.
We might have Stunning whiskey already on the calendar.
Ooh, you guys are gonna love that. I think
I'm
good choice.
sort of twisted between if I'm getting, and it's been a long time since I had either, but Loganberry or huckleberries.
So in Sweden they call them lingonberries.
Lingonberry, okay.
Lingonberry. So we did a lingonberry raspberry wine finish about 3 years ago, part of the Bjorksav or seasonal collection, and it was called Jaktvin or Jaktliquor or hunting wine. So the Swedes do make a hunting wine made out of lingonberry and raspberry, and this is what they take deer hunting with in the fall. So when the season's open. So yeah, it's similar, very similar to cloudberry and lingonberry. Well, to me, for instance.
Okay, thank you.
All right, no problems, Tony.
Matt, somebody put it in the chat and beat me to it. I do see cloudberry casks available for sale on the website. Can we
That
do
is correct.
cask pick?
Yes. So how the casks work is we've done a lot of casks. We do a lot of limited edition casks, but Cloudberry we do have one, and that Cloudberry cask specifically is by Vin, the same company that we used the Bjorksav and the Yacht liquor with. So that is the same Cloudberry that casts all the wine that we use in say for instance Midas. So that is part of that. So those are available. But I know there's probably about another 25-30 of those left right now available for option. But we do have other ones, other casks available. We've got Swedish oak, American oak, we've got bourbon and Oloroso, but we also do sometimes have PX casks. We do use some rum casks from Plantation or Planterry. So there are some cool things laying around. So yeah, we do have some interesting things. It just depends on what you guys are looking for at the end of the day.
Beautiful. We'll talk offline. I think this is definitely something that I'm interested in. I know I've talked to Carl about this.
Yeah, and if anyone else would like to have a chat, please just get hold of us at Mackmyra. I'm more than happy to have a chat to you guys about it. But I'll have a chat to you with him straight directly after this. I'll send. Sorry, David. I'm just reading what David said. Yeah, no, definitely. It's on from Orlando Airport on the train, an hour up the drag from Orlando to go to the distillery. Not an issue. We'll be able to get you by the taxi as well. And then Malmo for hours. So I have a ton of. Okay. So Elijah's been to Malmo. One of our warehouses is in Malmo, by the way, Elijah.
I've only ever been to Stockholm, so
yeah. No, as I said, I mean we've got about 8 active warehouses currently in and around Sweden. So the nice thing about owning a cask in Sweden, and I'm really jealous about it, is you can pick and choose. So you can have one either in the Bodis mine, which I'll show you later, which is a 50-meter underground mine where most of our whiskeys matured and stored. We've also got as I said, decommissioned old kind of military base kind of fortification place where we call the secret forest warehouse, which is by the distillery. And then we've got things against the archipelago. We can actually go, sometimes we have whiskey tastings on what they call Fjällrama, and we take people lobster fishing and have whiskey at their cast. So we do a lot of cool activities, and that's kind of what we do, is the experience side of things, and that's kind of what we're also about, is not only the innovation and the environmental friendliness, but the experience of Swedish whiskey and coming over to experience Mackmyra.
that's part of buying a cask.
Part of buying the cask, yeah. You can come and visit your cask. Once your cask is there, you come and choose where your cask goes. You choose the recipe, and you come and visit your cask anytime you want to. And as I said, we send samples to you every year. So you'll every year get a sample of your whiskey from day one to when you say it's time to bottle.
Beautiful.
Okay. All right. Are we ready to move on to Identitate, guys?
Mm. On your end, do you differentiate between the first three that we tasted and the last three that we're tasting? Are those like the core range versus the limited range, or?
Yeah. So the only two core ranges that you guys have on tonight's spread is our Svensk Ruk and our Svensk Ek. Those are our core ranges. All right.
Okay.
And then what you experience with Bjork Savin Intelligence is what I would start referring to as some of our legacy whiskeys. And that's purely because Angela is no longer with us. And you'll see on the whiskey, it says Master Blender Angela Di Orazio. Now, as I said, the blender coming on this now is Lee Johnson, who is now our new blender. She was a understudy, or she studied under Angela while she was there during her tenure. So she's taken over the reins. So yeah, it's now a different kind of Mackmyra setup, and there are different kind of profiles. As you can see with Midas, it's a whole different kind of taste experience. And we still have the kind of traditional flavors that we have there that we have with Mackmyra, but yeah, the bottle itself, this is, as I said, a new era. So the next one, Identitate, is part of our first big batch release, which has taken over from Bjork Sab in the seasonal range. So this is the 10,000, whereas Midas was the 3,000 small batch run. Okay. Identitate. Now we're going back into things, and this is where we're going to start getting into our peat. So we've had 3 elegant whiskies up to date now, with maybe the exception to the small minute smoke tail that we found in the Intelligence. Now again, this Identitate is basically our identity, what Mackmyra is famous for, and this is basically a marriage of Svensk Ek and Svensk Ruk into one bottle, but it is beefed up, I would say, by 3-4 years. So we're looking at between 10 to 12-year-old whiskeys that go into this. So a lot older, a little bit more complex, but it still has a beautiful Swedish touch to it. As you can see, it's again, limited edition. It's in our new look bottle. And remember I was telling you about the dimples at the bottom? If you can see the little dimples at the bottom over there, those are the 3, as we said, we've kept that. That's the founding members' thumbprints, believe it or not. So it represents the founding members' thumbprints. All right. So as I said, this is a big batch bottle. So these will be obviously around in existence until we run out of 14,500 of them. Again, we're now going away from what used to be the traditional 46.1 ABV. Lee's now playing around with cask strength whiskey. So we use a lot of cask strength kind of whiskeys leaning up to about 48. I know we're coming out with a 52 or 55 ABV later on this year. So we're starting to now go into a phase where we're looking at more cask strength kind of traditional kind of ways of making whiskey. Now, the casks going into this, as I said to you, are mainly bourbon, Swedish oak, and American. And now the Ambassador cask is one of our innovation casks, if I can put it this way. And this is, again, part of our innovation DNA. We tend to mix and match things together. So the Ambassador cask itself is a 30-liter cask that we've actually coopered. But the kick with that is the head and butts, the front ends of it, those are bourbon casks, but the straiths going across the barrel itself are actual Swedish oak casks. So this is a unique kind of cask specifically that we've actually coopered for ourselves. And we have sold these in the past, about 3-4 years ago, but we've kept some of these back to actually add a little bit of an element to it and use these casks in some of our blends. So it's a very unique mix and match of, let's say, it is kind of like Svensk Ek, but not in a way. It's more of a spicier note, really, really super intense on that. Now, you keep on hearing me telling you Svensk Ruk, and I keep on saying peated with that. There's a reason why I say we call it Svensk Ruk or smoky distillate. We still do a ground smoke peat process on site. One of the very few artisanal distilleries that still do that globally. And as I said, we use Swedish grains, but also Swedish peat from a peat bog just down the road. So when we get on site, we kind of in the beginning said, how are we going to create a Swedish peat? What are we going to be able to do with that? So we came up with many ways. We kind of experimented in the very beginning, in the early 2000s, with a lot of ways of smoking it. So the founding member Magnus and one or two of the other blenders in Angela style, they said, okay, what can we do to kind of bring that Swedish element to our peated whiskey? And we tried everything. The thing we found that works best for us is juniper, believe it or not. So when we do smoke the barley and stuff on site, and we use an L shipping container, we actually go and harvest and pick some juniper in and around the distillery. We add it to the actual peat in the smoking process of our barley. Now that lends a very distinct kind of flavor, which you'll taste a little bit more of in the next bottle, but that juniper gives it a very smoky campfire quality. So hence the reason we call it Swedish smoke or smoky distillate. We don't call it a peated whiskey. It is a peated whiskey, but we prefer to say smoky. So that's where it comes in. So have a taste of this. Let me know what you guys think on the nose itself. If you do pick up that hint of almost a campfire, it is in the background, but you'll get a lot of sweet notes to this.
So I'm a peat head. This thing is absolutely fantastic, and I was kind of like, wait, did I get a bottle that's marked wrong? Because I would have thought this would be Svensk Rög.
No. So I mean,
But this is fantastic.
It is. So when our smoky distillate comes out, it comes out about 60 ppm. So it's not a very punchy kind of peat itself. It's a very inviting peat. And for anybody who's not a heavy peat drinker, who doesn't like a peated Scotch whiskey or an Islay, that kind of thing, this is a great starting point for anybody who's trying to get their palates into peat.
I mean, this is this is the stuff I drink, right? So yeah, I love my peat.
Yeah, so I mean I mean, like, for me, that's big man peat. I do love my peat, but I'm not a big peat drinker myself. I do like tasting the stuff. I'm still getting my palate up to very super peaty level, but I'm getting there safely. But anybody who's trying to get into a peated whiskey or trying to peat for the first time, I would steer them towards us, because it's a really exceptional peated flavor itself.
And I do find it very interesting, because on the nose I get the peat, but I get that thing I'm not quite sure what is, which I'm gonna have to assume that's a juniper that I'm getting.
Correct. So it's a very distinct one, and once you do taste it, and you'll find out when you get to Svensk Rög, it's something that people are like very surprised at. It's a very unique kind of flavor profile, and it's uniquely us. Again, it's a Swedish single malt peated whiskey, but this has a lot of complexity identified. So you've experienced this, which is great, but you've also experienced the Svensk X, so you are picking up a little bit of spiciness as well in that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I got a lot of the juniper on the nose that follows through into the palate with the smokiness. But I do feel that Swedish oak spice underneath it. I mean, this is just a really interesting blend. I do enjoy peat, so I'm not gonna say that it's too much. I think this is a really, really well balanced blend for me. And I agree. It's just lovely.
Thank you.
So I've poured both the Identitet and the Rock, and I've got them next to each other, and I nose them.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that the Identitet has more smoke peat on the nose than the Rock, and so I'm confused.
Okay.
I have not tasted either one. I'm just telling you. No, of course not. It's peated. But
it's delicious.
But it seems to me, just by the nose, that we should be tasting the Rock first and then the Identitet.
I would bet it. Now the Rook isn't that much stronger than the Svensk Rög. So the Identitet itself is a little bit more complex. The reason why I want you to taste this one, it does have elements of a lot of other whiskey, whereas the Svensk Rög is what we actually get straight wise. This is our attempt at and our way of doing Swedish smoke, whereas Identitet is just a nice way to show you the complexities of the other casks.
Okay, but so I guess the question I have is, on the palate, which one tastes stronger of peat?
For me, for my personal preference, I actually find that the Spence Rook itself, the one that you're going to go on to last, is actually more heavier for me, for some
Okay.
reason. All right, so
Okay.
it is, again, it comes down to the person's palate, but for me, it's a little bit more smokier. It gets to the point, whereas the Identitate for me just doesn't have that kind of same smoky element that I get from Spence Rook. So it's
So-
just a preference.
Okay.
Yeah, so to me,
Thanks.
so Identitet have a lot more complexity.
Correct. Absolutely correct, and that's probably where the difference comes in. But also just the ABV is a little bit higher than that. But I wanted to leave Spence Rook last purely because it's my favorites out of the whole, like the lot. I got a lot of favorites, but yeah, the Spence and Spence Rook are the two that captivated me.
Yeah, I'm sad because I've already searched for Identitet and I haven't been able to find it.
Yeah, also very probably going to have a chat to my friend Carl, which we will. We are looking at bringing you guys over some new products. As I said, Bjorksav is going to fall away, so I'm going to have a chat to Carl, hopefully relatively soon, to see what we can get out. We've got a new release coming this year, which is our Gruntier or Kaizen release, which are our green tea finished whiskies. It's a trilogy that we're coming out with. So I'd like to try get Identitate and a couple of those green tea bottles over, if Carl's willing.
Oh, dude, I'm definitely willing.
Yes, hi. How are you?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so we'll have a chat soon, but yeah, I think I did speak to you early on, but we'll have a chat Monday, possible.
Yep.
You're right.
Yeah.
All right.
When I was a kid,
I think I can free up my Monday for this chat. I'm in.
when I was a kid, like elementary school, junior high, we discovered the tequila lollipops. You know, they're supposed to have like tequila, the worm in them,
Yeah.
novelty, and then once you get into tequila, you realize it's like shit. But now, you know, in the food world, there's a trend to do like good versions of nostalgic food, and this reminds me of like if an excellent chef was like remembering those tequila lollipops and said, you know, I'm going to do an adult version of a like a smoky whiskey lollipop, but in like the best way. Like the little, you know, just reminds me of like if you would have solidified this and turned into a lollipop, I would be in heaven. I really like it.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, this was in one of our first awards this year for Identitate was a silver at the World Whiskey Awards. So we got a nice little silver medal to this, and we've got a couple of other competitions coming up that we've entered it in. So yeah, it's a nice way to kick off the new limited range, which has taken over from the seasonal collection. And yeah, it's becoming quite a popular whiskey. There is some talk about maybe doing another couple of thousand bottles for it, because it's actually become quite popular in Sweden and in Europe itself. So thank you very much for that, Jordan. I think that expression, I think really nostalgia coming to that, that's really interesting.
I just mentioned in the chat, I had my great uncles had a farm back in the Midwest, and every late fall, right before the first snow, they would trim all their random juniper bushes and pine trees, and you know, this just gigantic bonfire. And that's what this kind of reminds me of, that scent.
Yes.
It's also got a really elegant sweetness to it.
Correct.
It's, you know, I know you like to refer to the other ones as elegant, but I think you could put that on this one too.
Correct.
You know, it has that lovely smoky flavor without it being the only flavor, which is, it's so complex. It's really quite interesting.
Yeah, and that's again quite nice. It's the complexity that we're trying to bring to this, but it's definitely part of some of the bourbon stuff that we have on there, because as you know, it's a blend. And again, age statement wise, you're looking between 8 to 12-year-old whiskeys here. So you probably have a bit of a 12-year-old in there, and you'll have some younger spirit, which will probably be about 8. Okay. All right, are we on to the last dram of the evening, guys? All right, Svensk Rook. Now, this is, again, as I said, part of our core range. This will never go out of style or out of flavor. It might change from time to time, and I'll explain to you why.
Before you get into that, Matt, one quick
Yes.
second. We do have a tradition here as everyone's having fun. As we pour our last pour of the night, I want to invite everyone to grab a glass and turn on their camera for just a second. Come on, Brian, Shane, and Elijah, join us, won't you? There you go. Beautiful faces. There we go. Brian, don't be the holdout. Oh, yeah, that's not Brian. Never mind. All right, everyone. Raise a glass. Thank you, Matt, for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. Carl, thanks for helping us set this up. And to you, to Mackmyra, continue making great whiskey, and thank you for joining us. Cheers.
Absolute pleasure. So that Matt. Can anybody tell me why? And phew. This is why I said we're going to finish off on Spencer, guys. What do you think of that? Our take on what peat should be in Sweden, or a Swedish peat.
I'd really looked forward to this one, given that I'm a peat head, right?
Yeah.
It seems it's smoky but not peaty.
Correct.
Right. And I think that's just as much on me. I always, well, when people say smoky, they mean peaty. No, in this case, it feels like, no, this is smoky, and it even have that sweetness to it as well.
The sweet elements of that. Yeah, you're 100% right. So, as I said, the juniper smoking process, we do it on hand, on site itself. And let me bring up the slide so I can introduce you to the man of the hour, Hakan. So Svensk, meaning Swedish smoke. Basically our take on, as I said, on what a peated whiskey should be. And that gentleman that you see over there is called Hakan Anderson. He has been around, I would say, since about 2007. So he's the man, or our smoke master. So every time we do a smoke run or at the distillery at Gravity, he's the guy that does all our smoke, and he's the one who's perfected this. So without him, we don't have this technique. So it'll be a very sad day that he retires, but Hakan's going to be around for much longer. So as I said, we don't skimp on anything when it comes down to ingredients used in Mackmyra. So the peat itself is a white peat that comes from Cairn Mawson or Cairn Bog, which is about, I would say, about 200 miles south of where the distillery is. And as I said, we do it on a ground thing. And if you see where Hakan is standing in front of, this is literally next to the distillery at Gravity. And this is our smokehouse. It's basically a shipping container that we've kind of jimmied into becoming our smoker room. So this is where we do the magic. And as I said, around the distillery itself, there are loads and loads of juniper bushes. So we actually take those twigs, and that's what we actually add to it. So it is actually a dry smoke process, hence the reason for the Svensk work. It's not a peat, it's a smoky distillate. And that gives it that intense campfire taste. This comes out at 60 ppm. So it's not a massive big peat, but yes, we have added a little bit of Oloroso to it. And you'll also get a bit of American oak. And when we say cast size from 30 to 128, the 30 to 128 would probably be the American oak and Swedish oak itself. But the ex-bourbons are kind of where we actually focus with lots of the Swedish smoke into it. So your 128 would be your ex-bourbon cast that we use in the smoky recipe. Can anybody tell me, what do you think of ours? Is this where you guys are happy? Because we are coming out with something real soon, which is going to be about double the smoke appeal to this at the end of the day.
I really enjoy this. It's got all the characteristics of a peat that I really enjoy without the Band-Aid. It's got the smokiness from the juniper twig. It's got that sweetness from the different casks marrying everything together. I mean, it's just kind of a lush flavor. it's so interesting. And I would actually be very curious what a stronger peat of this would taste like, because this is so good, just like this. I can't imagine how you could make it better, but I expect you probably could.
So we're well underway with trying to get to that point. Last year we produced our first ever, well, our second go at it, an attempt at it at a new distillate. So we did what we call an extra Rook 2.0 distillate, which was awarded new make got category winner at World Whiskey Awards. So we've now taken that new make spirit, and we've actually started putting it into our 200-liter heads to do pre-stored recipes and 30 liters to start turning over that distillate a lot quicker. So hopefully within the next 2 to 3 years, you guys will start seeing some of this extra smoky distillate come through, which you've experienced a little touch of in the Identitate, because we did use a bit of the extra smoky in that.
Yeah, I'm also getting a lot of salinity on this one. It's really interesting. It's like a briny sort of overtone to it that I find quite fascinating. I'm still trying to figure out where that comes from, but it's just so good.
Yeah, so I've picked it up a lot with some of our whiskey where you say a bit of a brininess. It's almost like an oily briny coating that I sometimes get over it, and it's mainly with our smoky distillate. I think it's the juniper that actually lends almost like this viscosity that kind of covers the palate itself. We had a release called Destination, which was a port finish, but we had some of the smoked hell in it, and it actually had that kind of briny kind of solution going over it. So we do have that, but it probably comes down to also the mineral quantity in the water source that we use. We have a very high mineral quantity in the water and protein quantity naturally from the natural water that we actually pump up to the distillery and use in the distillation process. So yeah, there are elements that we do get with it, and that mineral quality, that brininess.
Well, that makes perfect sense, because it seems like it's so uncluttered that the what is there actually has a chance. Every single element can kind of shine through.
Yeah.
So to get that, like I said, that note, the little stone and salt and just all of that together. I mean, this is just, I'm a fan.
Thanks, Jay. So
Yeah. I'm looking up because I'm desperately trying to see if I can find this Identitate somewhere, and I'm looking here, and so you made at some point in time a winter rook, so basically a winter smoke.
Yes, so winter rook or winter smoke, that was done. That was one of the, I think it was either the 6th or the 7th winter seasonal release we did. That's a very old distillate that we did. So it is
Okay.
kind of similar to, but that was a lot younger spirit that went into that. Obviously, as we've grown, we've been able to use better and more mature spirits as we've gotten older. Winter rook will have some of our older but kind of newer spirit in that.
Gotcha.
So it'll be a lot more punchy.
No, it just stuck out at me, and so it sounded interesting.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well,
if one was to fly to Scandinavia in the late November to see the lights and visit the distillery, how long do you think one would need? Just not that I'm looking at flights right now.
Well, look, I mean, the distillery itself, I mean, as I said, Stockholm from Orlando, it's a train ride away. Get there, we'll recommend a hotel for you. And then from the hotel, it's literally a 5-minute cab ride up to the distillery and back. So not an issue. And then from Gävle, you would go further up north. It would probably be about 2.5 hours till you get to where the optimal places with your last sky igloos you can go to. So it's about 2.5 hours from Gävle itself. So you definitely pick up a bottle of whiskey and shoot up and go see the Northern Lights.
Wow. So a week, 2 weeks?
Yeah, I would say about 2.5 weeks. Good show if you want to go take a look there, and then definitely go make a stop down in Stockholm.
Thank you.
All right.
So we did vote for our favor of the night. My mind is being blown. Based on what you've learned tonight of our palates, what do you think won the favorite expression of the night?
Me personally, I'm thinking either Identitate or Bjorksav. But I've got a funny hint that it might actually, for the Pete guys, it's probably going to be Svensson.
So what's your final vote?
I would say Identitate.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna close this out. I think just about everyone has voted. It is Identitet by a landslide. I have not seen a landslide like that in months. Wow. 53%, 56% voted for Identitet, and then just
I mean, so I will say Identitet is my clear favorite, but I did order, I guess, the last bottle admission on the Bjorksav, so waiting to pick that up probably tomorrow or over the weekend.
Oh, there you go.
But I'm trying to find a place I can buy the Identitet, and so far no luck.
No worries, no worries. Leave it up to me and Carl, and we'll get that sorted out relatively soon for you guys. We'll try and
interestingly
get-
enough, Svensson did not get a single vote.
I know my heart's actually crumbling. But I can look. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that. It just means that Identitate, we are on the right track with our new brands, which means a lot to us. And
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, I'm definitely going to take that back to Lee. And this is one of the,
Svensk would have been my second choice. I liked Muda so much though. I had
like
to
it.
go there. I had to go there. I couldn't vote for the smoky one.
Oh, perfect. But like, guys, thank you very much. I mean, Identitate, as I said, I'm going to take that. This is the kind of information I need to take back to the forts and take back to Lee. You know, for as her, she's our new blender coming into it and stuff like that. And we're all on a new journey at the distillery at the moment. So seeing something like that is something I will go back to say, like, no, this is something we got to start, looking at producing a little bit more often. I will do, Jason.
Now, what would be the closest city to fly into to the distillery?
Would be Stockholm. Would
Stockholm?
be Stockholm. Yeah, I would definitely say go to Orlando airport. They've recently revamped it. They've called it now Sky City. Probably the biggest duty-free shopping experience I've ever experienced in my life. It's about 2.5 miles long, and it's just duty-free after duty-free, and our whiskey's in there, and it's a good price.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and the reason why I say Orlando, as soon as you come into the airports and you get out of customs and passport checks, the station is literally underneath the airport. So you actually walk down, you get onto the train, and it's literally from the airport to Gävle to the hotel. It's an hour.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Is
So
there any
Dean
other?
may have to give me your email address so I can find more information.
Not a problem. You guys, like, if anybody needs any questions, please either have a chat to Vadim or, contact us directly at the customer service. But have a chat to Vadim. You guys are more than welcome to contact me anytime if you've got questions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, guys.
All right,
Thank you
great
very
night.
much.
Thank you so much.
Guys, thank you. I really do appreciate Vadim. Thanks to everybody for having me. Carl, thanks very much for arranging this with the demon and them. I hope that this isn't going to be a last time. I'm sure it won't be. So let's do this again. Hopefully later on in the year or maybe in the new year.
Absolutely. Anytime you guys want to do a part two, I'm happy to do it. And Carl already mentioned he knows a great place around here that does meatballs. We might go there for an in-person event.
Yeah, but I don't know if IKEA will allow us to bring our own bottles.
Hey! Corporate said we can't say their name out loud, but they want it. You should be happy I didn't send you a chair you had to put together yourself to do the meeting.
Right. And Vadim, thank you very much for sending a reminder me for this one. This is I'm very pleased, even though they're Swedish, but it's close enough.
It's the one
close
Dane
enough.
in our group.
Oh my goodness.
We won't hold
No,
that.
this was very good. I was very impressed by this lineup overall.
But with Bjorksav and Mudas, you got to say, I wasn't lying. Flavors that I've never tasted anywhere else. It's just unique and interesting and clearly
and
taste.
Absolutely. And what I mean, as I said, as a P-Ted, when I tried the Identitet, it was, as I said, I drank Octomore on occasions, right? I mean, this to me, and please close your ear, Matt, because I don't want you to jack up the pricing. I mean, this competes with an Octomore for me. It really does.
Thank you.
So, and Octomores, I mean, to put it in perspective, I actually ordered the entire series this year, 14, 1, 2, and 3 Octomore,
All right.
straight from England, paid £100 in shipping, just so I knew I was able to get them all.
I'm with you.
So yeah, so when I don't say it lightly that this Identität I feel competes with the complexity, with just that entire experience
Thank you.
as a Peathead.
No, thank you very much. I mean, I'm more than happy to hear these kind of things, and it's definitely something that I can take back to the team, and we can work on something like this. But it's good to know, like, again, that we're on the right track.
No,
And
they don't
I'm very
need.
much blown away. I'm very much blown away
Yeah.
by the fact that no one voted for Spence work. I'm still shocked. Sorry.
I don't know. I mean, they don't need to. They don't need to mess with Identität. They just need to make more of it.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, I will take that back and just mention that there is maybe a bigger need coming. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. But thank you, Henry.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Have a great night.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.